This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masteringencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Hey everyone, Larry Bailey here, Mortgage Workflow Partners. It's Tuesday, 4 o'clock, live event on the best community in the world, Mastering Encompass. Thanks everybody for showing up. For those that are coming live, if you're watching this on the replay, get your butts to the live event. Tuesday, 4 p.m. We're kicking around the community to possibly change up our Thursday event. Right now it's set for 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We're toying around. We're playing around to see what everybody wants. So for those that have showed up today, thank you very much. Chris, thank you very much. Amy, thank you. If you guys ever want to come on stage, obviously to share anything that's going on, let me know. Just we'll invite you up as a speaker. So a couple things. First of all, some general housekeeping. I'm continuing to update the community, and I'm doing my honest best to not make it overwhelming, but bring value in. I'm also gearing up to make sure that these conversations that we're having are geared towards other team members in the industry, right? Loan production industry. So loan officers, processors, underwriters, in addition to obviously administrators and executives, making sure that we're bringing value to everyone and helping everybody through a lot of the changes that are going to be happening, especially on the Encompass platform. So today we're going to talk about the topic we're going to talk about is role access to documents. It's one of the more convoluted sets of rules within the business rules, mostly because it's heavily involved in workflow. And so if you don't understand where a lot of these dots are, you'll end up kind of overlaying some settings. And then of course in production, what do? We add roles, and then we forget to go back into role access to documents. Companies merge, and it can get really gnarly in there. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, always you come first as a community. So the only thing I'll say is we've got a TPO release coming out this week. If you're doing TPO business using TPO Connect, there was a release note. I put it into the community yesterday. Today's Tuesday, right? So yesterday, I'm going to be doing that walkthrough. It'll just be a recorded session, and I'll post it to the Encompass important updates for that TPO walkthrough. So in case you find it, you'll see what's going on. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, observations, things that are happening, some other things that are coming up? It's not going to be this week. I thought it was, but certainly within the next 2 weeks, like we talked about on Thursday's call last, better ways to visualize data. Did get the presentation in. So for those that are either looking for a better visualizer than what you currently have, or you're looking for any kind of visualizer that ties directly into Encompass in a really slick way, stay tuned for that. And then lastly, if you're in the plugin market and you're looking for a better partner on that, Mortgage Workflow Partners created a partnership with Awesome Technologies to basically bring in all of the API and all of the SDK plugins that they offer into a monthly subscription at $299 a month, $6 per closed loan with a $1,500 cap. So those are the updates. Again, not for everybody. Sometimes there is no budget for plugins, but if you are in the market for having that reviewed, I'd be glad to walk you through and what those things are. So in any event, for those that are coming up, go ahead and jump in the chat and ask any questions as you have them. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen and get into see if I can share the correct one here. All right, cool. So welcome to Encompass. Today we are going to focus in on role access to documents. So it's important to really understand what we're really focusing on here. And the word access is simple enough, but it does get confusing. So what we're really talking about is this column right here. Access means seeing it. It's not to be any other definition. It's just, can the role see the document? Now, to understand what that really means, you have to understand what a role is. So as a reminder, a role is made up of two specific components. A role is a human being that either has one of the listed personas in the role or is part of one of the listed user groups. And so when we look at something like loan processor, right? Most companies have loan processors. It might be called account managers, but everybody's a loan processor. And we typically only have personas in your roles. If you check your Encompass, it's probably how it looks. But the reason why you use user groups in a role is because if you've got a group of users who are not defined by their persona, but are more so defined by the group that they're in relative to the role that they will perform in the file. A really clear example of this is like an exception committee or a loan committee. Those are or second review team. These are folks that may have all different kinds of personas, but you need them to be shown up in a loan file in the file contacts tool within a specific role, whether it's milestone based or not milestone based. And when you put them in the file within that role, that's that's what they take on. So when we go over into business rules and we go into role access to documents, first of all, this checkbox showed up in the last couple of years. I don't honestly remember if it was like version 20 or 21, maybe. I'd have to go back in the archives. I'm sure somebody smarter than me remembers. But you used to not have this checkbox. And so if you're an old dog like me, everybody was an other unless they were listed in the file in the role that they were assigned to in the file. Now Encompass doesn't behave that way. So what Encompass, if you check this box, what Encompass says is, looking back at imagining you're looking back at the E folder, if a loan officer adds a document, and by adding a document, it means created the document at that moment while this rule was active. So in some loan file somewhere, the person who has the role of the loan officer adds a document to an E folder, these roles will automatically be able to see the document. And so where it gets really wicked is, and I've been spending more time with Massachusetts folks, so wicked comes out of my mouth, sorry, for anybody that wonders about that. So what's really crazy is if you happen to have a bunch of personas, or you happen to be part of user groups that are also, Sharon's gonna snipe me here. Thank you, Sharon. She's one of the folks I spend time with up in Massachusetts. Anyway, if you happen to have a user account that has multiple personas, or you belong to a bunch of different user groups that go across different roles, and you have this box checked, everything's fine until it's not fine. So as an admin, if you ever get the support ticket or the request or whatever, and they're like, hey, Johnny or Jane can't see this document, but I can see the document right away. I want you to think role access to documents, business rules, or persona, in case somebody was able to manage access within a document. And we'll kind of talk about that in a second. So what I want you to really take away here is that every time that you create a role in Encompass, all of these are blank. So the only way these don't get blank is when you created, when you first provisioned Encompass, and you went in through your implementation, And you had an implementation person like myself, and I said, you need to go into every role. You need to identify when the test role creates a document, who is supposed to see it. And so, again, in the past, or if you have this box unchecked, a lot of times Lockdesk comes up and they're like, listen, if Lockdesk creates a document, I don't want everybody to be able to see it because they're sensitive documents. There's pricing in there, or purchase devices, or whatever. So as an admin, though, if you add those sensitive documents to a loan template set and a loan officer creates the document, guess who creates it? The loan officer, not the Lockdesk. So while you think you're going to get this, if this is what your desired outcome is, you'll end up getting this, even for Lockdesk documents. So if you ever had that situation come to pass, that's the reason why that's really happening. All right, so let me pause, take a breath. Any questions so far about what a role is? If you've tried to build a role the way I've suggested it, between using either exclusively personas or exclusively user groups or a combination thereof, and any questions about this checkbox at all, because again, if you go into your Encompass and you look at your setting, it's probably checked. And what that means is that even if the person is not listed in the file contacts, the behavior of the documents that they either create or try to see in the e-folder is going to depend on the role that they would be assigned. Now, naturally, if you're thinking, well, if I have multiple personas and I have multiple user groups and I'm not named in the file, which one is Encompass giving that person? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. This gets back into the whole multiple persona syndrome. The reality is, if you're not sure, create a user account that mimics, create a test account that mimics that user account and log in for yourself and see. Hopefully you've got a user account that you can test that with, but replicate everything that they have and then go into a file and see what they see, other than getting up and going over to their desk or resetting their password and logging in as them and then resetting it again so they can continue with their life. Those are the ways that you deal with it. So going back into the e-folder, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll keep going. So the last piece here on the role access to documents that, again, gets confused most is when you go into a document, it's this access here. I've been on plenty of support issues where somebody thought that meant that I don't want this person to be able to edit the PDF. So that's not what this is saying. This is just saying, can the closer role view this document? So as a reminder, this gets into, again, everything leads to something. So this gets into persona settings in the e-folder tab, which I'll bring up here on screen. And in terms of managing document access, so if we go into, we'll pick on loan processor, and we go into the e-folder, do we want the, right in here, so do we want the, sorry, down Larry, not the document. Thank you. Do we want this persona have the ability to manage access to documents? And do we want to remove access from any protected roles? Does anyone who's with me today, does anyone actually use a protected role workflow? Or does anyone have any interest in learning more about it? Or have you tried to use it and either were successful with it or had to roll it back because it was creating complications? So a lot of, see if we can get any responses. So a lot of times when you get into managing access, again, depending on how your role access to business rules are set up, sometimes you need somebody to be able to modify the document access, whether you're adding roles or removing roles. And then you get into this situation of protected doc access, which I'll kind of get in here next. Looks like a bunch of people are typing. So we'll wait for them to come in. Underwriters protect. Okay, cool. Yeah, so thank you, Kim, for that. Use it last company, same as Kim. Yeah. So typically the reason why we have role access to documents business rules, again, is to see the document or not to see the document. The ability to modify the document depends exclusively on if it's being protected. So again, one of the more confusing parts of role access to documents is this protected role. So basically what it's saying is Encompass came up a long time ago with this idea of, I'm going to allow you as an administrator to create a role that when given access to the document will protect the document. Protection is relative. Protection references in the eFolder tab for every persona the ability for that persona to either, if I can click the right tab, to either do this with the document or do this with the document. In your Encompass, if yours looks like this, great. If yours looks identical on both sides, that's not cool, unless you did that on purpose. So in the case of Kim or Rick's last company, when you want the underwriter to be able to manage protected documents, so what the underwriter would do, administratively, what you'd want to do is make sure that the underwriter can both manage unprotected as well as manage protected. And the reality is you probably had some other persona, manager or post-closure maybe, that also had some protected document access rights here. So what we're talking about is we go into the eFolder, and in my environment here, I have, let's pretend I'm taking the role of the underwriter. And I know that once I reviewed this fictitious appraisal file, I want to make sure that this document can't be modified by just anyone. I want it to be protected. So what I do is I go to Access, and I go pick the role that's very clearly labeled Protect Doc Access, and I click Save. You're going to get a pop-up. And it says you're about to grant access to one or more protected roles. Once this is done, the document cannot be deleted, and access to this role cannot be revoked, except by those with the appropriate access rights. I wish it said persona rights to kind of remind everybody it's persona, but whatever. Click OK. So you have the ability to use special characters. I usually do *P. That way it's really clear in the access column if the protected is in there, because it's asterisk will be up at the top. For me, it's just easier to see an asterisk versus an underscore. But the reality is right now, if you had a persona that had a different setting from protected versus unprotected, that's what it's doing here. So if you create a new persona, or your workflow changes, or you're in the middle of a conversation with, I don't know, some type of investor delivery issue, or you pick up on a use case or a ticket where somebody's like, I didn't do that, somebody else did that. Or you look in the history and you're like seeing all kinds of stuff going on that your company's not happy with. You may want to consider going to a protected document workflow. But keep in mind, if you do that, and Kim and Rick, I don't know if you guys had this problem or have this problem currently, Kim or Rick, at your other company. But keep in mind, if you don't allow everybody to work with protected documents, they're going to have to go create a new document to tie to the condition if they want to, like browse and attach a file. Because they won't, if the processor doesn't have the ability to do this, then they have to create a new unprotected document, add the file to that document, and then attach that document to the condition they want to submit for approval. So although in some regard, using the protected document workflow is great for document securitization or security, and you have to make sure you build it into the workflow so they understand what's going on. And Kim says, we did see it as an issue in a previous company. It's been quiet here. That's because people get used to it, right? If you don't have a lot of, first of all, if you don't have a lot of resubs, this problem goes away. If you have a lot of resubs, this problem is usually a little bit more obvious. as far as workflow, like how you're going to always create. Also, if you do this and you have a workflow of creating multiple documents, make sure that you remember that if you want somebody to remove a file from a document that you don't want to ship because it's expired or some other reason, make sure that, again, not everybody's going to be able to remove current version from the file that's protected in a protected document. So a couple of things to keep in mind on this, but the role access to documents is one of those things where it's never just about the setting. It's always about the workflow and how you implement, think about just this one topic, right? We talked about personas. We talked about user groups. We talked about roles. We talked about business rules. And then, of course, we talked about workflow. So having all that tied together is really important. Any questions, feedback, stories of woe because somebody couldn't get to a document that they wanted to? It's not surprising if you don't have them. A lot of times people just work around it. I would encourage you, though, if you haven't done so recently, remember you can always go down in system administration and go into settings reports. When you go into settings reports, you can go to persona and you can go into all your personas and you can go into eFolder access and generate that report. And that'll tell you all your personas for all your tabs within the eFolder, whether you're using protected or unprotected. Yeah, so Chris, you're a small company. Thanks for the feedback. Listen, man, the reality is that you don't have to worry about protected documents until you have to worry about it. So if somebody has been totally cool with managing eFolder properly and you don't have any investor delivery issues or quality control issues with your loans, you don't have to have a policy that indicates who can access or modify documents after the underwriter has cleared the file for close, then you don't need anything to do with role access to documents or protected, I should say. You don't need to do anything with protected. But that's typically where it comes up. It's usually a policy or a procedure issue. It's usually a quality control issue, usually investor delivery issue. It's usually an ops manager who's been like sliced and diced from a previous company and they're not having it this time. Or an underwriter who's been sliced and diced from a previous company and not having it this time. It's usually when this comes up. Rick says, used to be a nightmare with our lock desk folks. Yeah. Right. And that gets back to, again, if Lockdesk is creating a document that they want everybody to see what they have, but they don't want everybody to see every document they create, then you have to, every time they go and create this. So for that, Rick, you might want to consider doing automation through a plugin. So a plugin can actually take care of that problem. Again, you might not need it now, but in times where velocity of files was a little bit higher, plugin can be remarkably helpful on this because it will automatically sense the name of the file that you're using and automatically apply role access to documents settings based upon individual granular settings. Oh, you got it, Chris. I'm glad it's helpful. Sharon, yeah, it's actually, Sharon, we talked, it's a long time ago, but we talked about this in my Encompass health check in this, that, yeah, you shouldn't have both sides the same for every persona, because if they're both the same for every persona that's used in production, why have it? It makes no sense. But you want to make sure that we're not adding the protected role to every document. Otherwise, if you unwind the protected access within your persona, everybody's going to have a hell of a time. And remember, these rules are applied. I want to reinforce, if you're making any changes to persona access, sorry, I don't know why I said that, to role access to documents, these rules go into effect the moment the document is created, not the file, the document. So basically, when you go to create a document as a user, Encompass reaches into the setting, sees what's going on with role access, and establishes that at the document creation. So keep that in mind. Yeah, persona reports, Kim, they're awesome. I love persona, system reporting. So if we come over, that thing should be done by now. Download the report, and so yeah, definitely leverage your settings reports. Let's see what else we got. Chris, we talked about. You're welcome. Rick says, "Yep, I tried to consider that, but we know how that went." The plugin, okay, yeah, we'll talk about the plugin, Rick, if you want. Luba says, so without a plugin, if you add a new persona, is there a way to give the new persona access to the docs? All right, so here's pop quiz, everybody. I want you to put in chat. What do you think about Luba's question? Is what we've been talking about tied to a new persona? So you go and create a new persona. Is it about the persona? Correct answer is, come on, guys, chat. You guys are watching. So is the access to the document tied to the persona? Chris says yes. Well, no. So that's like it's complicated. Remember, access to the documents based on the role. So I know you might be thinking yes, because you're thinking persona is tied to what somebody can do with the document. But Sharon's right. It's the role. So remember, so if you add a new persona, to use Beth's word, it's complicated, because when you go into company user setup, remember, it's not about the new persona you created. It's about where the persona is going. If you create a new role, yeah, now you got to deal with a whole bunch of stuff. But if you simply created a new persona and you added it to the role, like let's say you have a loan officer assistant persona, and you add it to the loan officer role, you got nothing to do. Nothing at all, Luba. But if you create a new persona and then you create a new role, now everything's new. Well, yeah, if you go create a new, it was a trick question, Chris. That's me. I'm a tricky guy. If you create a new role, so if I go and create a new role, watch what happens. Right, and I'll just add in an existing persona. Save. Look what happened down in my role access to documents, business roles. I got this new role. Everything's unchecked. So anytime you want to create a new role, do it like on a Friday night on a weekend, or whenever. Do it Sunday at 3 a.m. when you know nobody's going to be creating documents in your system, so that you can go into the new role and you can not only address the new role, but now you have to go into every single role to address the new role there too. So both ways, Luba. You got to worry about the role creation. You got to worry about the role itself and what happens when they create a document. Can anybody else see it? And then you got to worry about when somebody else creates a document, does the new role have to see it too? So like anything else, no, it doesn't. And that's the point of plugins. So to Luba's point, if anybody's watching chat, if we go in and create this new role, does this role we didn't even talk about milestones. So let's not even get there. Let's just pretend documents. If I go into any existing documents, this role access is not going to be there as checked off. So if you create a new role and you got a whole bunch of loans in process and you need that new role to be able to see it, you're going to have everybody go in, right mouse click, set document access. Come on, Larry. Set document access rights. And you're going to have to, the new role's not there because I didn't restart Encompass, but you'll see the new role. Pretend this said new role. You'd have to hit that and click save to add that new role to all of the documents. That's a crowdsource. So what I usually do for that is I crowdsource that with the company. So I tell everybody, hey, we got a new role. Sorry, we'll buy you pizza. It's a pain in the ass. We'll buy you some coffee, whatever. I need you to go into the files, select all, right mouse click, set document access right, and check the new role. Thanks everybody for helping. Unless you have a batch update tool, unless you have some other type of third-party plugin automation to automatically add that when you open the file, those are the ways you deal with it. Either manual or through plugin automation. Great question, Luba. And Sharon, you get a gold star for getting it right. Any other questions? Okay. Hey, listen, last thing I'll end with is within the community again, we've launched out the monthly plans for support. So if you know anybody who needs to get or wants to get significant training as an administrator, everybody knows, or at least hopefully you know how I like to train, very deep, wide, and long. We actually have a year-long engagement to make sure that information is passed, knowledge is passed, and that we're always available. You can check it out on the community. If it's for you or if it's for somebody else, we've tried to make this stuff super affordable and unlike anything else that's available in the marketplace. And then we're doing the same thing for loan officers, processors, and underwriters. So same thing. We're trying to make it. I'm trying to make it a level playing field for as many people as possible on that regard. So thank you everybody for coming today. I try to keep these things to a half an hour. And as always, I need the feedback. If we need to change anything, do something, make something better, whatever, just always let me know. And thanks for your support and appreciate your involvement in the community to make it grow. So that's how we'll end. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Enjoy. And next time I'll see you, I'll be broadcasting from Hawaii. So see you Thursday. Later all. Bye.